There is a version of this conversation that nobody has. Not in the self-help space, not in the wellness space, not in the relationship space, not in the way that it needs to be had. Because the conversation usually goes one or two ways. Either it becomes about fixing women, which misses the point entirely, or it becomes so careful, so focused on not offending anyone that nothing really gets said. This is neither of those. This is a conversation about biological reality, about the nervous system, about what it does when it's dysregulated, about what is possible when you are regulated. And this one especially about women. Not because women are the problem, but because women historically and biologically are the emotional center of the relational system of the home. And when the center is dysregulated, chronically under stress mode, chronically absorbing everyone else's emotional state, chronically performing calm while holding everything together, the effects ripple outward in ways that we don't fully see until someone decides to look. When the emotional center of the system is dysregulated, the entire system feels it. We just don't have language for it yet. This isn't about blame. A dysregulated system isn't a character flaw. It's not weakness. It is not woman failing at something. It is a body that was never taught to regulate in a world that consistently gave it more to carry than the nervous system was designed to hold. What we're talking about today is what becomes possible when that changes. When the regulation becomes the practice instead of the suppression. When calm is something felt, not something performed. When a woman stops managing everyone else's emotional state and starts tending to her own, the ripple effect of that shift is larger than most people realize. So let's look at them. Let's start with the relationship between men and women, because this is where it's most visible and most painful. Here's a scene that plays in millions of households. A woman reaches out for a connection. She needs to talk, she needs presence, she needs to feel seen. And the man she's with is quiet, distracted, pulled inward, not fully there. Now, in many cases, the man isn't pulling away. He's just in his head. He's processing something. He's in a different mode. But a nervous system in threat mode doesn't read that in that way. A nervous system in threat mode reads withdrawal as danger, as rejection, as proof that something's wrong. So anxiety rises, the need for reassurance gets louder, and the pursuit begins. And the man feels the pressure of the pursuit, the urgency, the emotional charge. And that is what the nervous system does when it's under pressure. He withdraws more. She pursues more. He withdraws even further. And both of them end up in the worst version of each other. The most anxious version, the most defendant version, the most avoidant one. Not because they don't love each other, because two dysregulated nervous systems in close proximity amplify each other's threat response. He wasn't pulling away. Your nervous system read neutral as rejection, and the pursuit that followed pushed him even further. That's not a relationship problem. That's a nervous system problem. Now let's run the same scene with a different variable. Same man, same quietness, same precise moment. But a woman who is regulated, who can sit in the quiet without reading the threat, who can notice her own anxiety without being driven by it, who can stay present with the discomfort of disconnection without immediately reaching to resolve it. What happens? The man who is being pursued doesn't retreat. And often, not always, but often, he comes back on his own. When the space is safe enough. When it doesn't feel like a pursuit. She didn't try to fix him. She didn't manage him. She didn't change the emotional environment by changing her own nervous system state. And he responded to the environment. This is not about women suppressing their needs. It's about the difference between expressing a need from a regulated place versus expressing a need from a threat state. One creates connection, one creates distance. And only one of them is a choice that can start with her. A regulated woman doesn't need less. She just needs to stop leading with her nervous system's fear instead of her heart's actual needs. Now let's talk about the children. Children do not learn emotional regulation from instruction. They don't learn it from being told to calm down. They don't learn it from the rules about how to feel. They learn it through co-regulation. A child's developing nervous system is not yet capable of regulating itself. It borrows regulation from the nervous systems of an adult around it. Think about that. And the adult whose nervous system is most closely attuned to the child's, most of the time, in most families, is the mother. So what this means in practice is very simple. When a mother is chronically dysregulated, stressed, anxious, overwhelmed, emotionally scattered, the child's nervous system runs on that frequency. Not because the mother is doing anything wrong, because the body reads the room before the mind does. An infant doesn't understand why the person holding them is tense. They only understand the person holding me doesn't feel safe. And when that's the baseline experience, being held by the parent, someone whose body is always braced for what is coming, the child's nervous system starts learning. The world requires this kind of vigilance. So it starts to get programmed. The world requires bracing. Love comes with tension. Closeness comes with anxiety. So your child isn't absorbing your words. They are absorbing the nervous system state. That is the real curriculum here. Now let's see what changes when the mother is regulated. She doesn't try to perform calm, not to fake it, to actually regulate. The child in that environment experiences something completely different. They experience a body that holds them, that feels steady. A voice that redirects them without fear underneath that. A parent that is actually present, not distracted by every internal alarm or anything that is external. And from that experience, the child's nervous system learns something different. It can learn to be upset and the person next to them stays steady, which means my emotion is not an emergency, which means I can feel this and survive it, which means I don't need to numb it, suppress it, or perform my way out of it. That's not just good parenting, that's integrational pattern interruption. Because the mother who has never regulated herself, who learned to hold everything while showing nothing, who passes the survival strategy to her daughter, she's not a bad mother. She's passing on what she was given. But the moment she learns something different, the chain changes. Here's something about true intimacy that rarely gets talked about. You cannot truly be intimate with someone if your nervous system doesn't feel safe with them. Not emotionally intimate, not physically intimate, not in the way that actually creates real depth between two people. And here's where it gets interesting. A lot of women have learned to be physically present in intimacy while being emotionally somewhere else entirely. Not because they are cold, not because they don't care, because a nervous system that is running on low-level threat signals can't fully inhabit the present moment. Part of it is scanning, part of it is managing, part of it is somewhere else in the conversation that needs to happen, in the to-do list that never ends, in the worry about what other people feel, in the performance of whatever intimacy is supposed to look like. She was in the room, she wasn't in her body, and real intimacy requires both. There's a particular kind of exhaustion that is built from this. The exhaustion of being close to someone for years without being able to relax, without ever being fully in it. Sex becomes functional. Connection becomes a box to check. Vulnerability becomes too expensive when you're already running on empty. And the man in that dynamic often senses it not as an accusation, but as a weight, a distance he can't name, a feeling that no matter how close he gets, she's not quite there. And she's not because she doesn't want to be, because her body hasn't given her the condition to arrive. Now think about what happens when a woman is regulated enough to actually be present, not doing intimacy, being in it. The difference is felt immediately. By her, by him, by the quality of what happens between them. Real intimacy requires a nervous system that can stay when being seen gets uncomfortable, that can be soft without feeling exposed, that can receive without immediately needing to give or to manage or to perform. That capacity is not a personality trait, it's a nervous system state. And it's available to anyone who builds the right conditions for it. There's a concept that doesn't get enough attention: the emotional weather of a home. Every home has it, an ambient feeling that fills the space. something you feel when you walk in, something children absorb before they can even speak. The weather isn't set by the furniture or by the dishes being dirty. It isn't set by how much money is in the person's account. It is set by the nervous system of the people inside of it. And in most homes, the emotional weather is set most powerfully by the person who is most emotionally central to that system. When a person is in chronic state of low-grade stress, when the anxiety is always humming, when the overwhelm is always present, when the body is always braced, the home tends to feel those things. Children pick it up in the frequency and match it. Partners feel the tension and either respond to it or distance themselves from it. Everyone is slightly adjusted to the emotional weather without knowing how they adjusted to it. Your home has a nervous system and it's calibrated to yours. It's not always about a woman who is always serene, never stressed out, never frustrated, never a human. That's not regulation, that's suppression. And suppression makes the weather worse. Regulation isn't about being able to move through stress without the whole house absorbing it as their own frequency. It's being able to say, I feel overwhelmed right now, and not have that be a fact in your house. It's being able to repair after a rupture, which teaches everyone in the home that ruptures can be repaired, which teaches children that conflict isn't the end of safety. And what they can build from that baseline looks different, sounds different, and it also feels different. The ripple of one woman's regulation moves through her relationships, through her children, community, and it happens for years. That is not personal. That is cultural. We have seen what can change in relationships when the woman is regulated. What changes for a child when the body that is holding them feels steady. What changes intimacy when she can actually arrive. What changes the home when the weather changes. What changes communities when the decisions are made from clarity instead of fear. But this means nothing without one honest question. What does regulation actually require? And the answer is the hardest part. It requires a woman to stop treating her own nervous system as the last priority, because this is the pattern that closes dysregulation and it fixes the place. The woman who absorbs everyone else's emotional state because nobody else is holding it. The woman who performs calm for her children while never actually experiencing who she is. The woman who attends to the nervous system of everyone around her, her children, her partner, her parents, her colleagues, and never asks what her own body is craving. She's not failing. She has been trained by her own upbringing, the culture, by the survival, to believe that everyone else's regulation is her responsibility and her own is a luxury she cannot afford. She has regulated everyone else's nervous system, but nobody told her that hers was also a top priority. Regulation is not a retreat. It's not selfish. It's not indulgent. It is the infrastructure that makes everything else possible. You cannot sustainably co-regulate a child from a nervous system that has never been regulated itself. You cannot be fully present in intimacy while your body is running on a deficit. You cannot change the emotional weather of a home while you are the primary source of the storm. The work has to start with her instead of everyone else, before everyone else. Not because she matters more, because the system works from the inside out, and she's often in the inside. You can't pour from an empty nervous system, and you can't regulate what you've never been taught to feel. What regulation looks like in practice is unsexy. It's not a retreat or spa day. It's pausing before the reaction, the breath before the response, the moment she chooses to stay in her body when everything else wants her to manage it, to fix it, to flee. It's the decision to feel something uncomfortable instead of immediately finding something to do with it. It's learning to notice, I'm in threat mode, and noticing that allows you to create space for a different choice. Over time, through repetition, not perfectly, but consistently, you can change. So if you are a woman watching this, it's not about being calmer for everyone else. It's not about being easier to be around. It's not about making yourself feel smaller or to quiet your needs or to smoothing your edges for someone else's comfort. It's about coming home to yourself, because the version of you that is regulated, that is actually feeling safe inside her own body, doesn't just change the relationships. She changes what relationships become possible. She changes what you're being able to teach your children without saying a word. She changes what intimacy can feel like, not performing presence, but actually being in it. She changes the emotional climate of every room that she walks in, not because she's trying to, because a regulated nervous system is contagious in the most beautiful direction. The world's gonna tell you your needs come last, that people around you come first, that your job is most important to you. And some part of you has believed that. You have lived it. It has run yourself into the ground for it. But a woman who has tended to herself, who has learned to feel her own body instead of managing everyone else, she doesn't hold things together by force. She creates conditions where things hold themselves. That's the difference. And it starts right here with you. It starts right here in your body.